And welcome back to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. I am Dan Siegel, joined by Ben Anderson, and Mat Mlodzinski is back on the show finally. It's been a couple weeks without you, Matt, so we're glad to have you back on. Just another week in college basketball. A lot of games on Saturday. The Friday-Saturday split was like 10 games to over 100 or something like that. So I hope you guys were able to catch a lot of what went on yesterday. We're going to discuss it all, including everything that happened in the midweek section as well. So let's just get right into it. We'll start with our winners and losers, and we'll throw it to you, Matt, first, since you're back on the show for the first time in a while. So what is your weekly winner?
Yeah, I guess first my weekly winner should be the fact that the Bills season is finally over, so we can talk college hoops. That's my priority now. Honestly, it always is, but especially more that my full-time job gets a little bit easier. My weekly winner, though, in college basketball is Duke and North Carolina fans. And the reason I say this is because both teams stay in the top 10. This has happened a lot over the years, but lately, we weren't really sure. Obviously, North Carolina had the one down year. Duke's been a little bit shaky this year. And, you can say what you want because Clemson kind of got hosed in that game. They really should have won that game. Not sure about that foul call. They played great down the stretch. But when you get a Duke and a North Carolina matchup with both teams ranked in the top 10 of the AP poll, that just kind of makes it a little bit bigger. So whether you're a Duke fan, whether you're a North Carolina fan, an ACC fan, or just a fan of this great rivalry, it's going to be get your popcorn out for this one. I'll say that.
For sure. We'll talk about that one later. But Ben, what is your winner of the week?
Yeah, my winner of the week is the Big Ten's top three teams in the conference. I think they have made it pretty clear so far that Purdue, Illinois, and Wisconsin are just cut above the rest of the league at this point. And it's very paramount that they not take any bad losses. And this week, they did just that. They went 5-1 with the lone loss being Illinois on the road at Northwestern, who's probably the fourth best team in the conference right now. I think most people would agree with that statement. When Boo Buie goes off for 29 and 7 assists, it's just hard to win, especially in that arena at this point. So really, these guys need to stay at the top of the league as much as possible, avoid bad losses as much as possible, to make sure that the Big Ten has a couple of seeds that they are proud of come March. And I think they're doing a good job so far of doing that.
All right, and then for my weekly winner, I'm going to go with Providence fans. So just to put the context out there, Saturday, the Providence Friars, they hosted Georgetown, who is coached by Ed Cooley. Ed Cooley had jumped ship last offseason from Providence to Georgetown. And to preface this segment, I don't necessarily agree with the way that Providence fans treated Cooley, who brought them to their most success that they've had in a while. But that said, the atmosphere that the Providence fans brought just epitomized the college sports experience, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys saw that John Fanta video that he posted, but they're just students going absolutely nuts, beers just flying around, electric. And Providence, obviously, they end up winning 84-76, the final score behind Devin Carter's 29. So Georgetown, their program is a work in progress, obviously. And I think Ed Cooley is obviously the right man for the job there. But for now, Providence and their fans get the best of Ed Cooley. So a good look for them this weekend. Now we move on to the losers, and we'll start with you, Matt.
Penny Hardaway. Let's be real. Memphis was up, and now they are way, way down. They were ranked. Now they are no longer ranked. I know some people still believe they should be ranked. I don't agree with that at all. This is a team that I thought was the best team in the American. FAU was kind of moving down a little bit. Tigers started to play better. And now we see a Memphis team that has lost 3 in a row, albeit 2 on the road, but South Florida, Tulane, and UAB. This isn't losing to Florida Atlantic or North Texas, who have been playing good. I know that some of these teams are at the top of the American, and they're not going to win every game. But this was a chance for Penny Hardaway to prove how good Memphis is this year. It was a chance for him to finally get over the hump, and it looked like Memphis was going to do it. And now this seems to be the same old Memphis story. And is it all Penny's fault? No, because with no Caleb Mills, it makes it a much different team. He was playing well, a key player on this Memphis team. So it's not fair to place it all on Penny. But it is fair to say that a little bit goes on it as a coach when you lose 3 straight. You should have at least won that South Florida game probably a few weeks ago. You can talk about these road games a little bit more, but they've got Rice and Wichita State at home this week. Both teams with just 1 win in the American. They need to sweep that to keep people talking about the Tigers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And then Ben, we'll send it over to you.
Yeah, my biggest gripe this week was the fact that everyone seems to be incapable of having a normal opinion on the ACC. This all stemmed from John Rothstein's tweet after the Clemson Duke game, where he said, wow, now the ACC is in danger of only getting 2 bids to the tournament, which is kind of ridiculous. I don't think that Clemson was clearly in the tournament before this loss to Duke, and a loss to Duke on the road normally does not exclude you from making March Madness. However, the responses are like saying that the ACC is better than the SEC just because they tied them in the ACC-SEC challenge in November in the 3rd week of the season. And why can't anyone just look at it and say, look, man, if you watch an average ACC game, it probably looks a little worse than the average Big 12 or SEC game, or probably Big East as well, right? If you're going to have a gripe with anyone, have a gripe with the Big 10, but I don't think Big 10's getting that many bids to March Madness this year either, given the struggles that a lot of their mid-tier teams have faced. So yes, the ACC is down, but it's also not a 2-bid league. And I just don't know why everyone can't just say, like, look, this is just a pretty normal year for the league overall.
That's very true. A lot of people have kind of hypothesized that it might be a marketing issue on the ACC's part, which is an interesting way of thinking of it. But
maybe you should market some better games. Having just watched Virginia, NC State, like that's just
the ACC network was a disaster. I'll give you that. So that hasn't helped. But for my loser, I have to address what's gone on today in the Twitter world. If you're not on Twitter, you might not know about this, but Jeff Goodman, man, I don't know if you guys know listening to this, but Big East Twitter is just a different breed, and Matt definitely knows this. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes they're just a little bit too ruthless. But this starts when a DePaul fan account, I think his name, the Blue Demon Degenerate, he made a little documentary about the Ed Cooley departure and how people around the situation felt on all angles. And by the way, the documentary was actually very good. I enjoyed it. He posted it on this secondary account called Big East Films, and it contained a lot of copyrighted footage that he was unauthorized to use. So they took it down. The account was suspended, whatever. That's fine. Like, I think that's very reasonable. But then Jeff Goodman gets all up in arms about this. I guess he was trying to defend Ed Cooley. I don't know, but he had a couple of awful quotes in direct messages saying, in the offseason, when I have time, I will track down who you are. I mean, that's just a horrible look for the journalism, for the content creator industry. It's just not how we go about our business here at CBB Review. It's not how anybody should go about their business when they're creating college basketball content. It's not about gatekeeping your own stuff. I think it's about spreading the love of the sport, right? Like, this is why John Rothstein's very corny, but I'll always love him because he loves the sport and it's contagious. And just a bad look for Jeff Goodman this week. I don't know what he was really doing there, but definitely unprofessional to say the least. And if you want to know more about it, just go on Twitter and see what all the Big East accounts are saying. Anyway, let's get into some actual college basketball stuff, shall we? So let's get into last week's scores. We had a few. Actually, just looking at the host records. Finally, a 5-2 week for me. I am at 500. Look at me. I'll start with Houston, BYU. Houston 75, BYU 68. We knew BYU was going to try to shoot the ball like crazy. They are second in the country in 3-point rate. Houston holding them to just 11 of 38. Good on them. 4 straight wins for Houston. They had a little bit of growing pains, but winning on the road in the Big 12 is tough. This is a huge sign for them. They're starting to succeed, and they're starting to show that they could succeed the way they are currently playing, the way they've played the last bunch of years in Big 12 play. I'll send it to Matt next.
Yeah, 100%. Just to piggyback off of that, I mean, Houston does now look like, to me, the third true 1 seed behind UConn and Purdue. Whatever way you flip-flop them, they're like practically top 2 in pretty much every metric out there. And they just keep adding these quality wins after we weren't sure to believe it or not because they had a little bit of an easy non-conference. Well, now they're doing it kind of to a T at this point. And I know in Ariel's latest Big 12 basketball power rankings, he has Houston in the top spot for good reason. I know that's tough for him as a Kansas Jayhawk guy, but Houston is definitely proving it. I want to move to another game there, and that's Alabama-Auburn, because I almost had Bruce Pearl as my weekly loser. I ended up going with Penny Hardaway, but I almost had a different coach because Auburn's another team where Bruce Pearl had a chance to kind of, there's been doubts about this Auburn team. Are they a great team? They haven't really played many great competition. Well, this week they have Alabama and Mississippi State, and they lose both of those games. Obviously, the Alabama game would have been a nice win for Auburn to have as the Crimson Tide are 6-1 in SEC play. But Auburn goes 0-2 this week, and now we got to start talking about, okay, what's Bruce Pearl? How's everything happening there for him? But to me, that's my take from that game.
Yeah, in a vacuum, losing on the road to Auburn or to Alabama and Mississippi State is not that bad. However, given the fact that we were just waiting for them to beat someone good, it's not the best look in the world. They have their chances right later in the schedule because the SEC is still a tough league. But hopefully the Tigers can finally get that marquee win to get the monkey off their backs there. Nevada defeated Colorado State at home. That was pretty impressive to me. I did not think that Nevada was going to be able to pull that one out even in their home arena. I guess I was just a game early on that prediction because then they went to New Mexico and got destroyed last night. It was, I believe, 89-55 was the final score there. So the Lobos are looking like probably the third best team in the Mountain West right now. But shout out to the Wolfpack. They were able to keep their at-large hopes alive there. We'll stay on the West Coast, I think, for this one. I guess I was one game too early in predicting the Oregon win over Arizona because apparently we picked the wrong game, Dan, when it was just the two of us last week, because as a 17.5-point favorite, Arizona went to Corvallis and lost to the Beavers on a crazy shot by Jordan Pope. I don't see it with Arizona this year. You know what would be hilarious? I was workshopping this in my head, is if Arizona gets a 3 seed, let's say Gonzaga wins the Mountain West, gets placed as an 11. They meet in the round of 32, and Gonzaga just smokes them. Like, I don't think that's an unrealistic situation in the least. Maybe the unrealistic part is Arizona beating the 14 seed, but I'm not a believer in the Wildcats at this point in the year.
Wait, you said Gonzaga winning the WCC would get a 14 seed?
No. Gonzaga winning it as 11 seed, and then they meet in the round of 32.
Oh, okay.
You see how I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, good week for Caleb Love. He's 29.5 points on 60% shooting this week. I wish Umar Balo was a little more dominant. That's maybe a little bit of Arizona's issues, but a couple of the other games we haven't talked about. I'll take this one at being the biggest A10 fan of this group. Richmond 69, Dayton 64. Okay, so maybe the Spiders just are a good team. It seems like this happens every year. They start out rough and then they just turn it around. That's what happened that last time they made the tournament as winning the A10 and then being, I think, a 12 seed after a really disappointing regular season. But the thing about the A10, for Dayton, I'm not worried about them, right? I said they slip up once. Maybe they'll slip up another time. They're still a good team. The A people shows it. Holmes going 2 for 12 from the field is probably just a one-time thing. Richmond forced him into a lot of threes, and he's usually been hitting them for what it's worth, just not in this game. And the A10 has 2 other teams probably besides Richmond and Dayton that will get the double buys. And the thing is, despite Richmond probably putting together a good conference performance, it's not going to matter because the other 2 teams getting that buy will be in the same position. In other words, Richmond's not really going to get in that large bid, but good win for them. I mean, any given game in the A10, I think it's more entertaining than people give it credit for. So that's my Richmond Dayton take. Any of Matt, I'll throw it back to you, and then Ben, if you guys want to finish off this Week 11 slate with your takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just touch real quick on the Iowa State-Kansas game because I think that we need to start taking the Cyclones seriously. And I say this because Kansas is still the team to beat in the Big 12, even with Houston on top, even with Texas Tech playing as great as they are. It's a Bill Self-coached team with Hunter Dickinson, DeJuan Harris. This is a talented Jayhawks team. It is a very great Big 12 conference. Don't get me wrong, but I think that while a lot of these teams are going to make the tournament, it's going to be a situation where we might only still see like 3 Big 12 teams make the Sweet 16 because that's just how the tournament normally goes. A bunch of teams make it, but how many teams will really move on after a gauntlet of that league? Iowa State could be one of those 3 teams because when you go and win that game against Kansas the way that they did and really the play that they've been having there and the coaching that they have in TJ Otzelberger, it's all starting to hit, and Iowa State looks legit.
Yeah, absolutely. And to just round it off, I'll close out with Wisconsin defeating Michigan State. I mentioned this in my winners segment before, but I think Dan and I both had this pegged as a pretty easy Wisconsin win in our game picks last week. Michigan State had won 3 in a row, but they were against Maryland, Minnesota, and one other team. But it was maybe Michigan. But it was near the bottom of the league. It was sort of a fool's gold situation with the winning streak there. Wisconsin is good. Like, I think we can just say it now, right? Wisconsin's going to be good. They're going to be scary in March, I think, for whoever plays them, especially in the round of 32 on just 2 days rest. They're just a good team. I think we got to respect Greg Gard this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AJ Storr 28 points in that game, but they have a variety of options. Problem with Kansas, no bench. Their bench. Let's see their production here. So they accounted for 2 total points, and nobody on the bench played for 10 minutes or more. So Johnny Furphy coming alive as a 5th guy, but you can't have a 5-man team. That's the unfortunate thing for Kansas. So definitely that's coming back to bite them. A couple of misses in the portal for Bill Self. Now let's go around the conferences. So we've got 7 power conferences now that we do. We've added the Mountain West, and we'll start with you, Matt. Take us through the ACC. Ben talks about how some of the storylines have been misrepresented, so you could go wherever you want with this, but recap the ACC from this past week. What are your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, first off, when it gets into it, I was looking at the net rankings, and I know the net rankings have their flaws, but 80% of the ACC is in the top 100 of the net rankings, which would be the top 30% of college basketball. So I still think this is a very good conference. It might be off compared to some of the power conferences, but make no mistake, this is still one of the best conferences in college basketball. There is a clear national title contender in North Carolina. Blowing out Wake Forest, to me, just showed what this Tar Heels team was all made, because Wake Forest was hanging in there in the second half, and they just put them to bed. So UNC is legit. We can talk about if Duke deserves to be there or not because they've skated by a bit, but they are number 7 in the country, I believe, right? Yeah, number 7. They're 15-4. Do they deserve to be number 7? Probably not, but they're 15-4. They're 6-2 in a power conference. They're there. I think Clemson is still playing better. I know they didn't win, but they got there. They honestly, again, they should have won that game. Clemson's legit. I think you see an ACC team that, while they are not the elite power conference that many people maybe expect them to be with teams like Duke and North Carolina, they're underrated. And I think the ACC deserves a little bit more respect. Now, some of these teams are going to have to start playing better, and you might be able to see it tonight, because I'll be honest, Duke is on upset alert because Virginia Tech is a tough place to play. They've got great guards, and I'll say this, I wouldn't be surprised if VTech wins this game, and that'd be good for the ACC because Duke always gets the respect. I think the ACC needs a team like Virginia Tech who, if they pull off the upset, could be 6-4 in conference, 14-7 overall. Maybe we start rethinking things, and the ACC could be a 4-bid league.
I don't know if I think that's good. I want North Carolina and Duke to be hot going into the game against each other, but I really like Virginia Tech plus 3.5 tonight for whatever it's worth. Moving on to the Big Ten, where, Ben, we've already discussed a little bit of Wisconsin, Michigan State, Purdue a little bit, but some of the other teams, maybe the middle of the pack, how's this shaping up?
Yeah, absolutely. Nebraska is probably the biggest story at this point in the season. They just continue to not be able to do anything on the road. They just got crushed by Maryland. Are we going to have to take the Terrapins seriously at this point in the season? We might. They're on a pretty good streak right now, but I don't see much happening. I'm not going to predict them getting a bid or anything like that at this point. Michigan State did lose to Wisconsin. I think they're probably still in the field despite having all those losses. The metrics are just so strong, and we know that's how bracketology is viewed at this point in the league. Let's talk about the bottom of the league, though. Unfortunately, Chris Holtman's going to get fired, right? Like, he just got crushed by Northwestern. It wasn't even close. They are currently, I believe, they are 10th in the Big 12. They're just Big 10, 3-6 in conference. It just hasn't come together this year for the Buckeyes, and I don't see what the rationale is for keeping him another year beyond a solid recruiting class or anything like that. And then, for that matter, Juwan Howard might be on his way out as well. It's a real tough year for both Ohio State and Michigan. I guess they sold their soul for football this year. Iowa, I still don't know what to make of Iowa. I think this is just a Fran McCaffrey team, but without a top 15 pick, right? We've been spoiled with that a couple of years in a row. But now that is not the case, and they're just sort of middle of the pack. And then Indiana continues to amaze me how they don't have any shooters, considering they're in Indiana. Just a bizarre team. Maybe the strangest one in the entire country at this point. The Big Ten does not really move me past the top three teams, but I do think those three are very good. So that we'll call it even, I think, for the Big Ten overall.
Yeah, you got that right. Indiana just they anger me to watch because I feel like that's a team that should be good, and they're not running good offense. They're not winning games. It's unfortunate. But now we've got the Big 12, where there are three teams I think that are looking noticeably great, and none of them are Kansas. So of course there's Houston, right? And I talked about it a couple of minutes ago, their identity of smothering teams and like throwing high-powered offenses off their game. It's starting to work in Big 12 play. We were a little bit concerned about that, but they could do it night in and night out. They absolutely destroyed Kansas State on Saturday. That was great to see. Another team, Iowa State, in the top three. They are tough, play great defense, turn it into offense, and their home court advantage was also shown with wins over the Kansas schools this week. And Texas Tech, we haven't talked about them too much, but they lead the way actually at 5-1, an offense that could really light up the scoreboard in a couple different ways, most specifically from beyond the arc. But beating BYU and Oklahoma this week, that's encouraging. The rest of the conference, though, it's just cannibalism. You've got Kansas, who's now in that mix. You got TCU, you got Kansas State, you got Baylor, you got BYU, Oklahoma. Like, I'll even include Cincinnati and Texas in that mix. Just so many teams, and everybody I just mentioned is within one game of 500, either a game up or either a game up or a game down. Home team will usually win in this tier, but it's okay with the Big Ten. I think the cannibalism is fine. And the reason being is because they will probably most, if not all, make the tournament. So you could just attribute it to really quality conference play, even if the records aren't looking great. That said, though, props to TCU. 2 road wins this week for TCU, including a triple overtime win at Baylor. I caught the later end of that. If I had to guess, I don't know. What is this? A 9-bid league? 10-bid league? That's what Torvik's saying. Torvik has actually a 5% chance of it getting up to 11 bids, which would be crazy. But I guess that's the new world of super conferences. So that is the Big 12. Once again, I say it every week, best conference in the league or in the sport. Heading back east, though, we go to Matt in your favorite conference and the talk of Twitter today, the Big East. Are you? I think you're muted over there. Yeah.
Good call, man. I'm multitasking while we talk because I've got my Maddie brackets up, looking to see how many Big 12 teams I have in the tournament. And as I'm going through it right now, real quickly, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams. I have 10 teams out of the Big 12. in the tournament. So maybe it can creep up to an 11, but it is close. My Big East takeaways, though, again, that's been the talk of Twitter today. You talked about it earlier. It was the talk really over the past couple of days between Jeff Goodman and Providence Georgetown. I will start there quickly. Providence Georgetown did show, and you talked about it earlier, that the Big East is still one of the top conferences to watch. It might not be the same, it might not ever be the same, but the Big East is still great cinema when it gets down to it. Not trying to do a play on words there, obviously, with with what's been happening in the Big East cinema world. Let's talk about some other teams, though. Let's talk about Villanova, because I think we need to talk about a Nova team that no longer has 4 Quad 1 wins. It's now a 3-5 record in Quad 1, so they can't really boast having 4, which was a pretty good number. Now 3 is a little more average. They're 11-9 overall. 11-9 to me doesn't get you in the tournament. Like, Xavier has a good resume, but they're 10-10, so I'm not even considering them because I do not care. When you are that close to 500, or in the Musketeers' case at 500, you're not a tournament team. And the same for me goes for Villanova. You're 11-9 and under 500 in conference. I don't care if you have a couple Quad 1 wins. They've got a couple Quad 3 and 4 losses, not in tournament contention. You also see Seton Hall and St. John's sliding down. Seton Hall has moved into my last 4 in. St. John's is kind of teetering right now. They haven't been playing great. So at this point, the Big East is looking more top-heavy than ever. UConn is still a contender. Marquette and Creighton are contenders. But who else is there? Butler's playing hot. Providence is playing good. They play UConn later this week. I need to see something more out of the Big East, because right now I'm not seeing it enough out of that second tier. And that's scary, because this conference a few weeks ago looked like it could be a 7-8 bid league. Now, 5, 6, it's not looking great.
Yeah. Villanova, everything that we were worried about with Kyle Neptune is kind of coming into fruition. It's unfortunate to see, but we'll see. He obviously will get more time. So tough year 2 for him for sure. Ben, take us into the southeast portion of the country. Take us into the SEC and what's going on there. We haven't talked about much of that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Just off the top, I do want to mention Auburn again. I do think Auburn is a good team, right? I think they have a tough week on the road, but it was a great week for the haters considering they still don't have a good win. But I just want to put that out. I do, for the record, still think Auburn is a good team. The game of the week so far for the SEC had to be South Carolina, Kentucky. The Gamecocks have proven themselves. That was such an impressive win for Lamont Paris in just a second year. No one really thought much of anything about South Carolina coming into the year. They were picked, 13th, 14th in the league. But they have done an amazing job. They're currently 5-2 in the SEC, which is tied for 3rd. Beat Kentucky, who, for my money, is still the best team in that league. I know Tennessee probably deserves that crown right now, but I guess we'll find out on Saturday and when they play. Really just an impressive win overall, though, for South Carolina. Kentucky did not have the best of weeks. They obviously lost there in Columbia and then went on the road to Arkansas and really just squeezed out an ugly victory there over a Razorbacks team that is just not good. It's completely bizarre to me. Maybe the 10-man rotation that Musselman has used for a while now just finally ran out of juice. And this is what happens when you end up 1-6 in the SEC. Depot Davis is not currently with the team right now. That was some news that dropped, I think, the day before the game happened. So something to look out for there. Not sure what's going on in Fayetteville, but Kentucky was able to survive despite not having Rob Dillingham. So a win is a win, in my opinion, in that area right there. A couple other things to note: the wildest game of the day or of the week for the SEC and maybe even the country was Florida Georgia, the battle of Mike White. Florida had a 21-point lead, blew it all at the end of regulation, went into overtime. They were able to squeeze out a win there and keep their tournament hopes alive. But I thought this Florida team was going to be so much better. You and me were hyping it up early in the season, right? December, Dan. We thought they were going, sneaky Final Four pick, all that. They just, I don't get it. They should be so much better than they are, in my opinion. But that's where we are right now. And then finally, I wanted to end it off with a team that has to be on the most disappointing teams in the country list, which is Texas A&M, man. I thought they were going to be good too. But just it wasn't clicking this year for Buzz Williams for whatever reason. They are currently 3-4 in the SEC. They're not, I don't think, a tournament team at this point. They're only 12-8. Finished it off by blowing a lead to Ole Miss. to lose there as well. I don't know what's happening in Texas at this point, but that's where your SEC is right now. Tennessee is leading the conference. Alabama finally got their big win. Really, the top four is pretty much up for grabs in my opinion at this point.
Did I really say sneaky Final Four for Florida? I don't know.
I think I said it, and you said if the odds were right. So okay. let me own that. But
I don't know if you could find a video. If you could find a video clip of it, maybe I did. But
no, I'll claim it. I'll claim it. I just why aren't they good? They have Zion Poole and they have Riley Kugel, Micah Hand locked in, right? Like they have all these players. Will Richard. It's built like a team that should succeed in today's game, and it's just not. And I don't get it.
Yeah, I kind of fell off that train a couple months ago, but totally agree. We'll end it off with the conferences on the West. So we got the Pac-12, where you want to say Arizona is holding this league up. That's what we've said for a little bit, but despite that road win over Oregon, that was impressive, but it just looks so much worse when you lose to Oregon State in that same week. Oregon did manage to beat Arizona State, so they hold afloat. They obviously still have a lot more work to do, but it's just, I don't know. It's tough when Arizona's not holding up that league to get excited about Pac-12 games every night. Washington State handling Colorado was pretty huge, actually. I haven't checked the Natty brackets yet of this new edition, but it did bring both teams closer to the bubble in opposite directions, at least based on the consensus around bracketologists around the country. And a 2-loss week for Utah, also very unfortunate for the Pac-12 brand. Both Washington schools they lost to on the road. Like, the problem with this league is the teams are good enough towards the middle and bottom to beat the teams at the top, or maybe the teams at the top are bad enough to lose to the teams. Whatever, however you want to put it, they're like kind of beating up on each other. And then when you don't have that top team has an incredible record, nobody really has the non-conference resume to fall back on, and you're not going to be represented well by the rankings. So that's the Pac-12. As far as the Mountain West is concerned, it's Utah State and New Mexico who are separating themselves at the top a little bit. The Aggies, I think, of Utah State are just a good team. And then New Mexico is an absolute nightmare to play at the Pit. That is their arena there. And I think that's not only what I think is the best home court advantage in the Mountain West, but arguably like a top 10, 15 home court advantage in college basketball. Like, just listen to a game on TV. I've never been there, but it's really cool to see. And then like usual, a lot of the teams below them went 1-1. San Diego State looks in the best shape of that middle to top bunch. And then we haven't given Air Force much love yet, and they haven't deserved much love based on another rough year for the Falcons. But they did pick up their first conference win, doing it at UNLV, winning 90-58. I did not expect that to happen, but triple-double for, let me get this name right, Rightris Petritis. I definitely butchered that, but triple-double for him. Great. We'll give Air Force love probably once all year, and this will be the time. So that is the Mountain West and the Pac-12 summed up pretty quickly there. Guys, we have a banger week ahead of us, specifically the weekend. There's, I think, 4 or 5 games that are probably the best, like among the best games we've seen all year. One of them is Duke UNC. So let's get into these game picks. We're going to start in the midweek section, though. Believe this one going on Tuesday. There we go. Yeah, Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Texas Tech at TCU. We'll throw it to Matt first.
I feel like it's a Jamie Dixon coach squad. It's at TCU. And the Horned Frogs are also playing pretty well. I know Texas Tech is playing great. And I had Texas Tech, I will say this right now, they were in my bottom 10 of all Power 6 teams heading into the season. They might have been bottom 5. When I looked at that roster coming into the year, I had no trust that this team could be even near the top 25. Now they're pretty much a tournament lock unless they completely fall off. But Alas, Horned Frogs are at home, so I think TCU wins this game. But I wanted to make sure I gave Texas Tech the respect they deserve.
Ben, go ahead.
Arguably, TCU has been better on the road in Big 12 play than at home, which is strange to me. But at the same time, Texas Tech feels like Texas Tech is due for a loss. And I know, like, statistically, that's not how it works. But they just beat two comparable teams in BYU and Oklahoma to TCU. And I think with just the way that TCU is coming off a huge rivalry win against Baylor on the road, come back home, have Texas Tech, and it's another huge game in state matchup with the leading school in the Big 12. Give me the Horned Frogs. I think JB Dixon wins out with just the experience that Grant McCaslin doesn't necessarily have in the Big 12 just yet.
All right, I'm going to go a little contrarian to both of you. I'll go Texas Tech. I'm riding the hot hand. Well, I guess kind of both of them are hot. And the Horned Frogs have, like, I give them credit. They've shown a lot of resiliency, so that's the word, on the road. But this could turn into a shootout. That's the way I see this game going. Over under 153. So that's giving teams points in like the high 70s-ish. I think if it turns into a shootout, Texas Tech is a little more well equipped for that. TCU, their home road splits kind of go against everyone else in the country. They're almost better on the road, like Ben said. So at home, I'm going to go with TCU at home, I should say. I'm going to go Texas Tech. Then we go to the Mountain West. Boise State at New Mexico. This one Wednesday, the late night. We'll start with Ben now.
I mean, you just mentioned it, Dan. The Pit is so terrifying to play against, especially in conference play. Boise State has been good, but mostly at home as well. I like the Lobos here. I think they're coming around. They just have a little bit more talent than Boise State at this point in the season. I trust their guards like Howes and Mashburn a little bit more than Rice and Degenhart for the Broncos. Give me New Mexico at home.
Matt.
Yeah, dude, this is tough because, like, I really think that Boise State needs this game to stay in the tournament picture. I mean, right now, Matty Brackets has them as a 10 seed. I mean, let's put it this way. They've only played six games between quad 3 and 4. So this is a team that has played a tough schedule. So I think they can afford a loss at New Mexico. But at the same time, when you're kind of on that fence, you want to pick up a good road win here. But kind of like you guys have mentioned all show, I mean, New Mexico is a tough place to play. They're playing hot. I just got to go with the Lobos in this one. Boise State will have more chances.
6.5, if that ends up being the spread, I think Boise might be the lean against the spread, but same reasons you guys said. Only reason I think it might be a little closer than 6.5 is because Boise is just such a tough team to blow out. And they're a good defensive team, but I'm also going to go Lobos, so Lobos across the board. Staying in the Mountain West for game 3, we've got Utah State and San Diego State. Now we go to the banger of a Saturday, and I'll start with this one. I'm going the opposite of what I said about Texas Tech and TCU. Like I said, that game's going to go on the higher scoring end. The three balls are not going to be reigning supreme in this matchup. It's going to be a lot of getting the ball inside, a lot of transition. Maybe the point total will be high, but it's going to come down to, in the half-court setting, who can create their own shots, in my opinion. And when that's the battle between Utah State and San Diego State, I'm going Utah State. And Ian Martinez is great in that respect. They have some guys that are good shot creators, good in the ISO. I'll go Utah State Aggies. Matt.
Yeah, Utah State has been playing awesome. I think this team deserves to be in the top 25. We've had a lot of talks with this with one of our coworkers, TJ. It's been awesome. I think his top 25, because of the Texas Tech love, got like over 300 likes. He's had a lot of interaction on that, so that's awesome. But one thing I disagree with him on, and I hope you're listening, buddy, because pay attention, Utah State is a Sweet 16 team. The Mountain West is a 5 or 6 bid league. With that being said, at San Diego State, with Brian Dutcher, you see a theme here. And this has been the theme in college basketball this year. It's tough to win on the road. You haven't seen a lot of great teams win on the road, no matter how great they are. And I think San Diego State takes this at home.
I'm with Matt here on this one. I like the Aztecs as well. Jaden Ledee has had quietly, arguably, an All-American level season for San Diego State, and Brian Dutcher out there. after losing Kashad Johnson to Arizona, I think it's very impressive how the Aztecs have come together on this one. And if you're giving me them at home as well, I think Utah State's luck is going to run out in this scenario. I just like Brian Dutcher and the coaching advantage, and give me the Aztecs at Viejas Arena.
All right, sending it right back to you, Ben. We've got Drake at Indiana State. This is our mid-major Missouri Valley Conference game of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. This is arguably, I mean, what more could you ask for if you're the Missouri Valley Conference at this point? Drake is slightly worse than I thought they were going to be this year. I thought they were going to have a little bit of a greater leap, especially behind Tucker DeVries. But at the same time, Indiana State is just such a joy to watch with the spacing that they have on the court at all times. You just see a single highlight from them, and the lane is you could take a picture of the entire painted area, and there would be like two people in the whole space. If it's Indiana State at home, I got to take the Sycamores. I think that they are just a little bit hotter right now, and I like the players like Robbie Avila to take it home for us. So give me Indiana State.
Matt?
Yeah, Indiana State's been playing great. Robbie Avila is a top post mid-major player in the country. There's no doubt about that. And I know I've been picking the home teams here. That's kind of my role for this week. But I just have a feeling that Tucker DeVries is going to get it done in this game. I mean, he is a mid-major All-American, in all honesty. And I just feel like this is one of those games where you kind of need a player like him. Like, I know you got the big man, but Drake has an okay big man in Darnell Brody. I think he might be able to hold his own against Avila. And I think that this is a game where DeVries can go off. I mean, we've seen what he can do in games before, and I'm siding with him in this one. Give me Drake.
I'll go Indiana State because I think they're the slightly superior team and at home. So I will go Indiana State, but just the promotion of this game. Like, I know it's Saturday at 6:00. There's a lot going on then, especially in the games we're going to talk about in just a second. But I have this on a second or third monitor because there are some star players. We talked about them both, and it's one of the best. It'll be quality basketball, in other words. And Indiana State is there. It's so fun to watch, especially as like an X's and O's fanatic. So definitely just wanted to point that out. But let's get into some of these games that I've been alluding to all episode. Duke at North Carolina. I definitely do not appreciate that from Ariel because this is this is prime ACC basketball, best rivalry in college basketball, if I must say. We'll throw it. Whose turn is it to go first? I think Matt. So we'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, the ACC is not trash, Ariel. You can take that and you can go home with it to your Big 12 country. How's Kansas doing, by the way? What are they, 4-3 in Big 12 play? Is Bill Self going to be fired yet? Maybe that's a topic for next week after they go 0-2 this week again. I'm just kidding, obviously, Ariel. We love you. This is not an even game to me. I mean, you see it with the line there. I mean, North Carolina is at home. They're the clear better team as of late. Like, I know that Kyle Filipowski maybe is a guy who can change a game, but I don't know if he can do that against this team with Harrison Ingram playing the way that he is, with Armando Bacot and RJ Davis, who's left off the Bob Cousy Award watch list. They have stuff to prove. And Ariel, that right there, that's Duke. That's the representation of Duke because they are trash in this game. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. Just give me North Carolina.
Ben.
Yeah, realistically, I'm not sure what the argument for Duke is beyond Tyrese Proctor showing that all his preseason hype, right? He has not been the player that many thought he was going to be coming into the year, and arguably Kyle Filipowski has regressed as well. So it's not a great – the vibes aren't good heading into the rivalry game, but everyone gets up for it, obviously, throughout the records. Given that it's in Chapel Hill, I don't see why you can't pick why you don't pick North Carolina. Shout out to Cormac Ryan, though. Born to be a Duke player, forced to wear a North Carolina jersey. I'm interested to see how he performs. I think that the pieces have come together in a best case scenario for the Tar Heels this year, and that's what's really impressed me about this North Carolina job. Give me the Tar Heels at home.
All right, so first off, I'm going UNC as well. I'm also interested to see if anybody's done a study of this. I feel like the underdogs in rivalry games tend to win against the spread more often than not, just because I think it's always closer than the discrepancy of the two teams indicates. So, like, in other words, 8.5 just might, like, if they're maybe North Carolina is 8.5 points better than Duke at home, but I think the rivalry factor does make me think it'll be closer than 8.5 on an average night. Either way, still North Carolina because we're picking these outright. Next game, another one, SEC banger. Tennessee at Kentucky. This one later on Saturday night, 8:30 that is. And I'm going to go with Kentucky. I have a feeling Ben's thinking this as well. I mean, I still believe in the Wildcats. I know they've dropped a few games that they shouldn't, and maybe even South Carolina at this point isn't even in that category. Maybe South Carolina is just simply a good team. Either way, I think this is one of the games they get up for. Their athleticism, their talent, their experience prevails. So I'm going Wildcats over Tennessee with the Wildcats at home. And let's see if Ben agrees. I'll go you first.
Yeah, I'm with you here for Kentucky. I think that we saw the lowest level of performance from Kentucky these past two games, and they still went 1-1. So I'm not super worried about the Wildcats at this point. If they get Dillingham back, he was down with illness last time during the Arkansas game. They're just a complete team, and I'm not saying Tennessee isn't, but I want to see a little bit more from them before we go on and crown them, a top 3 team in the country. However, I will point out Tennessee does play South Carolina at home on Tuesday, I believe it is. It's the game before the Kentucky game. If you're looking for a look ahead spot to pick an underdog, that might be a place to go for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, this is just a great weekend in college hoops. There's no other way to put it. I mean, this could be like the picks of the month, honestly. Tennessee and Kentucky, the battle for the SEC, it couldn't be at a better place because Tennessee's got the senior leadership, but Kentucky's got their freshmen. They're at home. Dalton Connect versus Antonio Reeves. Like, all these players are just playing great. And honestly, there might not be a loser in this one. This seems like a game where it could just go down to the wire. It's going to be like a 3 or 4 point game, might even come down to the last shot. But I'm going to take Tennessee in this one. I think Kentucky needs this game to grow. I think they've been playing good, but I think Kentucky hasn't been playing overly great. I know obviously the South Carolina game was one that we point to. A South Carolina team that should be ranked. It's 17-3, by the way, and not ranked is just like the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard in my life. But Tennessee is going to win this game by a couple points. I like that line, 1. Like, they might literally win by 1 point.
And then if you didn't have enough on Saturday, well, Sunday afternoon, you got some basketball as well, with finally no football to compete with it unless you want to watch the Pro Bowl. But Purdue at Wisconsin, and I'll throw to Matt first, actually.
Yeah, this is the game because Wisconsin was a team on my radar at the beginning of the season. A lot of people talked about them. The experience they brought back was a big talking point. They were iffy during the non-conference, but they've been fantastic ever since. They somehow still seem to be flying under the radar. And I think it's because they're winning, but they haven't played Purdue yet. And it's a Big Ten where if you haven't played Purdue, if you haven't played Illinois, then no one's really sure what to think about you. And here's their chance at home. I think Wisconsin gets it done. I do. Purdue has not been blowing teams out like UConn has, so it doesn't lead me to believe that this is a foregone conclusion that Zach Edey just goes off for 30 and 20 and 10 blocks. And I think Wisconsin sneaks this out.
Ben?
So this is a difficult one for me because typically I would say, Wisconsin at home, right? Purdue struggled on the road. The losses have been at Northwestern, at Nebraska, stuff like that. But if you look a little bit deeper into the numbers, it doesn't favor Wisconsin as much as you might think. They're a bad 3-point defense team, right? They're giving up currently 36% to opponents. That's 313th in the country. And we all know that to beat Purdue, you got to shut them up from 3, right? That's how you win, right? You get Zachy to get his, don't let him shoot from 3. That's how you win. I don't see a reason to doubt Purdue at this point in this type of game. So give me the Boilermakers to win on the road, sort of establish their dominance at the top of the Big Ten.
Agreed with Ben. I'm going Purdue. And yeah, I don't think the Badgers just have that specific formula. They're another way to beat Purdue. You also force turnovers and run. And Wisconsin's not like the biggest turnover forcing team in the country. They're more, we're going to take you deep into the shot clock, have you force up a tough shot. And when you have Zach Edey as your safety blanket, then that's good. That's good news for Purdue. But I'm not like fully convinced on that. It's another one where me and Ben could easily be wrong, but that's where I'm leaning. And that will do it for today's episode. Please, if you were watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel here. Leave us a like if you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're streaming live on that, so that's cool too. And we'll be back next week with our takeaways from all these great games. Thanks once again for watching and listening, and take care.